Hi, I'm Noel Richards. Welcome to my podcast. The other day, I watched again the video of Queen playing at Wembley Stadium in 1986. My friend in Budapest, Victor Laszlo, sent me a message telling me that the video was playing on Hungarian television. He sent me the link so we could watch it together. Victor in Hungary and me in Spain, sending text messages back and forth to each other. Victor's been the organiser of major worship events called This is the Day in Hungary and Central Europe over more than 20 years. In 2022, he organised a worship event that gathered 40,000 people in the National Stadium in Budapest. In his message to me, he mentioned that without this video of Queen at Wembley in 1986, This is the Day would not have existed. Let me tell the story. In the autumn of 1986, I was leading worship at a small event on the Isle of Wight in the UK. After the event, we had a late supper in the pastor's home. In the background, the TV was on and the channel was showing the video of Queen's concert from Wembley Stadium in July of that year. As the concert came towards the end, Queen played their famous song, We Are the Champions. I watched, fascinated, as 70,000 people sang the song at the tops of their voices with hands in the air. It was a worship event, with Queen and Freddie Mercury the object of their worship. There are a few moments in my life when I've sensed the presence of God in a very tangible way. This was one of those moments. It felt to me like God was impressing on my spirit that this was a great concert, but that the words were not true. You see, there's only one champion of the world, and his name is Jesus. That moment changed my life completely. A seed was planted in my heart that maybe one day Wembley Stadium, where the gods of sport and music have been worshipped, would one day resound with the sound of true worship to the one true God. In that moment, I'd seen something in my spirit, and once that has happened, you can't unsee it. It haunts you. It's always there. In the years that followed, I had the privilege of leading worship at some major events in the UK, and probably the biggest was 80,000 people gathered in Hyde Park, London for March for Jesus in the spring of 1994. Shortly before that event, Tricia and I had written the song Champion, which declares that Jesus is the champion of the world. As I looked out at this huge crowd, I realised a worship event at Wembley Stadium could happen. It could be a possibility. I always thought that one of the Christian leaders I was working with would organise it, and maybe I might have a chance to be involved in some way. A few weeks later, I was travelling on a train and prayed a silent prayer, asking God when the Wembley Stadium event would happen. Now, I don't hear God's voice that often, but on this occasion I did. His reply was simply, when you do it. I gave you the idea back in 1986. I shared this experience with my good friend Gerald Coates, who thought I was crazy, but very quickly he realised that this was a God thing and got behind it 100%. Also, my friend Les Moyer, who's produced so many albums for me and been a leading figure in the UK worship movement, encouraged me. In fact, he'd carried a similar vision for many years, and from our very first album together, we'd been working on songs that had an anthemic stadium feel. In the autumn of 1994, my album Warrior was released, and we toured the UK promoting it, but more importantly, sharing the vision to fill Wembley Stadium for a worship event. The response was incredible. Everywhere we played, people cheered when we mentioned the idea of filling the most famous stadium in the UK. The idea went viral without the aid of the internet or social media, which in those days hadn't been invented. To cut a long story short, in June 1997, we filled Wembley Stadium with almost 45,000 people and sang that Jesus is the champion of the world. Following this, in the spring of 1998, I met Victor Laszlo for the first time in Budapest. He had seen the video of our Wembley event, and in the part where we sing Champion, he'd spotted somebody waving the Hungarian flag. That moment changed his life, and a seed was planted in his heart to see something like Wembley happen in Budapest. Victor and I, together with a few friends, prayed at the old stadium in Budapest, asking God to fill that venue with worship. This was another special moment, and those days together saw the beginnings of This is the Day in Hungary. That old stadium was eventually demolished, but on the site, the new National Stadium was built. And in the summer of 2022, it resounded with worship. I also got to sing Champion of the World there. I want to encourage you as you listen to this podcast, look back and remember the moments that changed the direction of your life. Those supernatural God moments and friends who've influenced you and helped you on your spiritual journey. And perhaps there are more of those God moments yet to come in your journey, no matter how old or young you are. That moment back in the autumn of 1986 changed my life forever. I will never forget it. Whenever I see videos of Freddie Mercury performing, I remember. When I watch them performing We Are the Champions at their 1986 Wembley concert, I get emotional. I also get choked up when watching Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie that tells the story of Queen. The final part of that movie sees them playing We Are the Champions at Live Aid at Wembley Stadium in 1985. That song gets me every time and reminds me of the day I stood on the stage at Wembley in front of thousands. The feelings and emotions come flooding back. It's been such a huge privilege to play some amazing stadiums in the UK, Europe, and the USA. However, stadium events don't change the world, but I think they have the potential to make moments that change the world of all those who are there. And who knows what can happen after that. This is Champion of the World from the stadium in Budapest in 2022. Thanks so much for listening.
His light will shine in every nation. A sword of justice he will bring. We will raise a shout. We will raise a shout.